Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar, which is about navigating the private school admission process. And this is hosted, of course, from a Flint Hills School, where we hope that you or your child will blaze a trail. So I am Jennifer Webb, and I am the Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid here at Flint Hills School.
And I am Jordy Izzard. I'm an admission officer at Flint Hill School, and I am going to be moderating the session that Jennifer is presenting today. And if you would just take a moment to notice, there's a little box at the top right hand of your screen. I know we have a lot of these presentation platforms these days. So this is a little cartoon looking box. And if you click on that, that is your opportunity at any point to submit any questions you have. And we'll either address those in writing or out loud. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jordy. So in terms of our webinar today, we have a few topics that we'll cover that are all under the umbrella of navigating the private school admission process. The first topic is finding the best fit school. The second topic is discovery and the admission process. So that's really getting to know the school through visits, meetings, virtual visits, and applying. And then the third is next steps to move forward with Flint Hill specifically. So I purposely numbered those. We could go ahead and practice using the chat function. I invite everyone to type in there 1, 2, or 3, or a couple of them, of what you're here for today, so that we can be sure that we're making the best use of your time today and focusing on the areas that you're here for. So you can type all 3 numbers, you can type 2 or 1, 2 and 3, a lot of 2s and 3s, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's a good mix. Thank you so much for sharing, and feel free to, if you're still typing, keep on sending it in. So we will cover all 3 areas. To get us started here, the first step we really recommend is to start early. Now is really the time, the admission season in the independent school world. I know that we do have a lot of attendees that do have kids in independent schools. Some do have some different processes, and for those of you that might not have a child or experience with independent schools, the admission season really starts in September. And so now is the time for really the discovery and getting to know different schools that you might be interested in. And we do recommend that you start with a kind of a self-reflection of you, your family, your child that you're seeking school for, and think about what your family values, what your child values. What qualities, experiences, and knowledge do you want your child to have at the end of their experience? What size group do you thrive? Does your child thrive in? What kind of community are you seeking? So those are some of the things to consider when doing the self-reflection step. And I meant to mention that we have a piece of content that's on our website. It's called Navigating Your Search in a Digital World. And that can be found on our How to Apply site. You can click there and sign up for it. And I'm going to be posing a lot of questions for you to pose to yourself and to schools you're seeking as I go through this presentation today. A lot of those questions can be found in that article about navigating your virtual search. And then, of course, some will just be in this presentation. So in terms of doing some of this reflection, the next step is really to think about I'm sorry, let me just change slides there. It took a minute. Okay, so it's really considering the basics about a school. So, of course, the first basic is location. Where can you get to? If you can't get to the school, or your child can't get to the school every day, then it's probably not going to be a good match. There are, even if you can't drop your child off and pick them up at the location every day, there are some other considerations. Ask the school if they have transportation. A lot of independent schools do have bus services. There might be an added fee, so you want to ask how much. You'll also want to ask, a lot of schools will have carpool networks. So just because you can't physically drop your child off there and pick them up doesn't mean that there might not be some other systems to get them there if there's a school that might be out of your personal driving distance. So those are some things to consider about transportation. And now this next category is a really big one. So the next category is about the educational philosophy and culture. So you'll want to ask the schools that you're seeking if they have a portrait of a student or a portrait of a graduate that they can share with you. At Flint Hill here, we have our portrait of a student, and that's, we have the portrait of a student more than the portrait of a graduate, and that is because we are really focusing on the journey. Of course, we are, also think about the outcomes, and our families and our graduates report in terms of outcomes. Most of our graduates report that they are more prepared than their peers to handle the rigors of college academics, to engage with academic faculty and resources, to engage meaningfully in academic pursuits, to solve problems creatively. They're more confident in exploring passions and pursuing their goals, and they take responsibility for their actions. So that's some of the outcomes, and you can ask the schools that you're looking at, what are the outcomes of their graduates report back on. But when looking, you also want to ask about, of course, the portrait of a student. And at Flint Hill, the portrait of a student indicates that our students at Flint Hill are self-directed learners, they're problem solvers, they're leaders, they're effective communicators, and they're ethical citizens. And we have more definitions on our website. We even have had events and webinars that you can find the recordings of on our virtual events page that really dive more into the portrait of a student. And of course, you can reach out with any of our team members because that is its own topic. So when you're looking at schools, another big part of it, of course, is the culture part. So at Flint Hill, we are, our approach to education is we are the school. We're always curious. We're always innovating. Flint Hill unleashes each student's potential to make a meaningful impact on the world, inspiring our students to think and learn without limits. Flint Hill understands that each child is unique. Every day, we redefine what education excellence looks like and continuously innovate across programs supporting students to excel in wholeness and cultivate their passions. Our students learn to appreciate their own journey while developing confidence to blaze their own trails. So that is Flint Hill's educational philosophy. That's how we look at education and the journey of education. Our mission of Flint Hill Education focuses on the learner. Within a context of strong relationships, we create developmental experiences that embrace the best practices of traditional and contemporary education. Through continuous growth, we actively and thoughtfully implement the ideas and resources that help each student investigate, create, and communicate collaboratively and effectively in a rapidly changing, interconnected world. And then our vision for every student is take meaningful risk, be yourself, and make a difference. So that is a little bit more about an example of what a culture of a school, how you might be able to understand that. Of course, the mission, reading more about their educational philosophy. And then, of course, the values are going to be a big one. Here at Flint Hill, we are really united by our core values. We must come together as a community and act with integrity, mutual respect, and compassion and support for each other. Flint Hills core values are steeped in our culture. They are taught at the earliest grades, and then they are enforced throughout the entire journey. These values are the measure of all we do and inspire us to be our very best selves every single day. So this is particularly an important part for us, and even something that we consider during the admission process, because the partnership between school and home will be the strongest where there is an alignment of values. So in thinking about that, you want to seriously consider and dig into an institution's values. And then finally, when considering the basics of an education, of a private school education for your child or children, cost is another area that is similar to location, in that affordability is critical. So you want to take a look at your family's budget to determine what level of tuition you can afford. You'll want to research all your options, and don't be too discouraged if a school that you're interested in does seem out of reach financially. Many independent schools do offer financial aid, but you do have to get started early in the process. So if you're interested in applying for financial aid, you'll want to make sure you're understanding those deadlines and in the admission process right away. We dive a lot deeper into this topic of affordability in private education in a webinar that we're hosting on October 20th. So if you're interested in learning more about affordability and aid and all of the ways to afford private education, we invite you to join us on October 20th for that webinar as well. So you'll want to, of course, look at the fees and the tuition, consider if they have flexible payment plans, do they have tuition refund insurance, and asking how financial aid is awarded are all great questions when you're beginning the journey into discovering different independent schools. As you're thinking about the investment, of course, naturally, you're going to wonder, is it worth it? There are many reasons why our families definitively say yes, and some of them include small class sizes and low student to teacher ratio, and that supports the student experience, but it also allows for the cross-community faculty training and consistency. Also, teachers have flexibility in independent schools in how and what they teach. And in the absence of mandatory testing, they can really focus on the mastery of real world application. Also, they find that their students receive early inspiration from bold, creative teachers with advanced degrees that you'll often find in private schools. Character development, so back to that firm foundation in values that you typically find at independent schools. Private funding for private schools also ensures that critical programs remain in place. Independent schools often create and foster self-directed learners. At private schools, you'll find a connection with a close-knit community and support system, and we'll talk a little bit more about community later. And then the foundation of security and safety enables children to take meaningful risk, which is, of course, part of our vision, and to be themselves. So after you have considered the basics of a school and of your family, you'll really want to start to dive deeper into the learning environment. So you'll want to choose a school with a curriculum and a delivery method, of course, that you think your child would respond best to. For example, with small classes and attention to every student at Flint Hill, we're able to individualize learning and teaching to each student's strengths. Our approach in the lower school is a responsive classroom, and in the middle school, it's developmental design. So you'll also want to think about, what do you want your child to get from their experience? Are you looking for something more traditional and linear, or opportunities for your child to dive deeper into learning and discovering more passions? You'll also want to think about, does your child have a diagnosed learning difference? If so, you want to make sure that the schools on your list all have the resources that are going to help your child understand how they learn best. Here at Flint Hill, we have a nationally recognized learning center, and we work with students with diagnosed learning differences from the earliest years through upper school to develop tools together to help them not just merely handle the rigors of our program, but to really excel. Other questions to ask about the curriculum is if the school is committed with intentionality, consistency, and involve the entire community, such as providing professional development to support best practices and faculty involvement in curriculum design. That's one of the things that I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, is that you'll find at private schools is that there's a real consistency across faculty and being trained in certain approaches. But you'll want to ask the different schools that. In terms of getting to know the community, academics are important, of course, and that's, I'm sure, why a lot of you are here and thinking about independent school education or continuing on the independent school journey for those of you with kids that are already in independent schools. But people are really important too. So understanding a school's community and culture for students, for teachers, for parents, and opportunities for the whole family to engage are a really critical part of the process, because these are people that your child, and you are going to be spending a lot of time with if you choose to enroll. So you'll really want to ask the school about what they look for in prospective faculty members, what leadership or extracurricular opportunities are available for students, how parents can get involved, and also then determine which schools have the community members, so the students, teachers, and administrators that your child is going to best connect, so they can find themselves in a connected environment. Here at Flint Hill, this is certainly one of our strengths. At Flint Hill, I've heard parents say again and again and again that every day when they bring their kids here, they know that their kids have found their people, and often the parents have found their community and their friendships, and a big part of their life and support also here at Flint Hill as well. So that'll be something that you'll want to get a barometer on as you're going through the journey of discovering independent schools. And another question that I think is an interesting one to ask is if, again, trying to get at the school's ethos and the personality and getting to know them, is you can ask schools that if they were a person, how would they describe themselves? How would they describe that person? And Flint Hill, we've found that the answer to that question often is inventive, curious, courageous, supportive, inclusive, and intentional. So that's another way to uncover, is this a personality? Does the school have a personality that's really going to mesh well with my family? And then another important consideration is safety, of course. Safety is paramount, and while it's always been a priority for families, it's really taken a new meaning, of course, during the pandemic. So as you are researching your school options, you'll want to learn about sick day and absence policies, student and employee screening protocols, hand washing, social distancing protocols, facility cleaning procedures. And schools should be, as you're having these discussions, schools should really be prepared to partner with parents to support students who might be anxious or fearful about the well-being for their family and friends, and schools that are really going to help them, feel comfortable transitioning from, if they're in person now, from one in-person school to another, or if they've been a virtual learner and they're going to be a virtual learner for this year and then going to an in-school environment next year, a school that's really there to help support the students and realize all the layers to that transition, and have a team prepared to help students with that transition is a new consideration now. Another question, another consideration as you're navigating this process is flexibility. Are they agile? Can they go the distance? Quite literally with distance learning. And while we're certainly hopeful that next year won't require quite the same flexibility that this year did, it will still be important information to know how did the schools that you're considering provide continuity of education this year. Because asking future schools, even hopefully maybe it won't be a future consideration, but it still demonstrates what a partner the school is to families. If they were really able to provide that continuity of education at the end of spring, certainly in the beginning of reopening this year, and offering students all that they need academically and socially and emotionally as well. Here at Flint Hill, given our strengths that I've talked a little bit about today of innovation, flexibility, and that coupled with our commitment to our partnerships with families, we really made the change quickly and seamlessly in the spring. And then we took those lessons learned from the spring and we applied them when reopening for families this year, this fall, this academic year, where we're giving the person of both in-person classes or virtual learning. Families can choose between those two options, and they make that choice each quarter. As we're considering distance learning as potentially being a part of the future, something to ask schools is what technology do students need for their distance learning program? Is technology provided as part of the tuition? How do teachers provide instruction, create and track assignments, and communicate educational progress and grades? What their infrastructure is for providing technical support, and how you help online students stay connected to their peers who are attending school in person if the school is offering both options. Here at Flint Hill, of course, we had a very strong emphasis on building community, which is our emphasis every single year, is really building community. But this year, even more so, to make sure both the virtual learners and the on-campus learners are feeling connected. And we integrate technology heavily. So we were able to pivot pretty seamlessly because our students, our teachers certainly were used to using technology. So they were using it in different ways, and our help desk was there to support them with that. So once you've done, considered all of these different things, of course, during this process, I'm sure that you'll be making, or maybe you already have, if you've already completed most of these steps. I know that some of you have attended some other division-specific events, so you might be a little bit further in the process. But if you're still in the process of making a list, some great places to look, of course, Google. And looking also at the National Association of Independent Schools, NAIS, the Virginia Association of Independent Schools, VAIS, the Association of Independent Schools of Greater Washington for this greater DC area, that's AISGW. Niche.com is another great place to look. And then ask your neighbors, ask your friends, ask your colleagues is a great one, and ask around where what people have heard about the different schools. Do they have kids in those schools? And really see what you're hearing about all of the different independent schools that are within reach for you. So after you have your list, you'll want to inquire at all of the schools. So there is most schools will have an inquiry form, learn more information, something along those lines right on their website. When you submit one of those forms, you receive invitations to events. You are staying in the loop about deadlines and everything going on at that school. And it's often connecting you with the admission officer as well. You'll want to, right now, a lot of schools aren't in a place to be offering on-campus visits. So for this year, as you're going through the admission process in this virtual world, you'll really want to look for virtual events like information sessions, preview events. Some of you have been to them at Flint Hill, and see what other opportunities there are to hear from different people. We have several events events for each division throughout the fall. And each event, some events are very different. Some are really focused on arts and innovation. Some are focused on hearing from different faculty members and getting a real preview of the school. Some you're hearing from different leadership members. So pay attention to the description of the events, because a lot of times you might want to attend more than one event because they might be offering different opportunities to engage and connect. Another opportunity to see a school is if you're not able to get on campus for a tour, and even schools that are offering on-campus tours, a lot of times you're not able to see the students in the classrooms, and that's really what it's all about when you're looking at schools. It's not so much about the brick and the buildings, but it's about what's happening with the students and the teachers in the classrooms. So even for schools that you are able to get into, if you're not able to get into the classrooms, which of course is a safety issue for a lot of schools right now, then see if they have a virtual tour that goes into some of their classrooms. So we're going to be releasing a tour, a virtual tour for Flint Hill. It will be at the very end of October, the very beginning of November, and that will give a peek inside each of our classrooms by each division, which will be an opportunity to see more. Another great way, especially now, to really see inside the walls of a school is on social media. So at the bottom of our website, we link all of our social media accounts, and we're very active on the accounts, especially now, knowing that families are wanting to see more. And so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we have a Flickr account. We're showing pictures of our students in classrooms, describing the activities that they're doing, showing a lot of our day-to-day stuff as if you were coming on campus taking a tour, and you'd see some of these things happening when you were here. So a great way to take a tour almost once a week, or maybe every couple days, is to go look at our social media accounts. And I think a lot of schools are trying to be active on those accounts for that reason. Another opportunity to really see inside of a school a bit more is getting connected with current families and current students. Often admission offices are glad to provide you with the contact information for a current family or a current student, so that you can reach out to them and have a really authentic conversation and get their perspective on what their experience has been like at the institution. And then the very last step there is to apply, of course. Once you think that a school is a good match for you, the recommendation is, of course, to go ahead and enter into the admission process. Before I start to talk a little bit more about the admission process, I realize I've been talking for quite a while, so I just wanted to see if anybody has any questions. If so, you can go ahead and send them right into the chat function, and we can answer a couple questions. Otherwise, we can move forward to the admission process.
Looks like no questions right now, Jennifer.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Jordy. All right. Well, I will keep rolling then. So the admission process for a lot of schools is very similar. A lot of the AISGW schools in this area will follow a very similar process and timeline, though there are certainly some nuances from school to school. So you'll want to be having those conversations with the different schools you're applying. So the time to apply is now. The application opened on September 1, and we'll talk a little bit more about timeline, but I want to talk about the application process first. And I did the quotes for process because at Flint Hill and certainly on our admission team, we see it's so much more than a process. It's the potential start to a partnership. It's where we start the partnership with families. We love getting to know families. It's really about us getting to know each other, forming a relationship. And we do ask that families bring their authentic selves. We're here to be your partner in finding the best fit school for your child. And in order for us to help determine if a Flint Hill is that best fit where your child's going to thrive and blaze their trail, we can best do that, of course, when families bring their authentic selves. And a lot of times families will, feel some pressure or stress just thinking about admissions. And we really don't want that to be the experience at Flint Hill. We want you to enjoy the journey with us. And your family can rest assured that if a school is the best fit school, you will be admitted. You will be admitted to your best fit schools, because the process is all about finding the best fit. So I hope thinking about it that way will really take some pressure off of yourselves, your children, and the process. So you can just really enjoy getting to know the schools, and we'll certainly enjoy getting to know you as well. So the very first step in the application process is, of course, submitting the application form. Our deadline for having everything, including the interview, the supporting documents, everything in, is by January 21st. So you want to get that form in well before then, if you haven't already. I know there's a lot of families joining us today that have already submitted the application, and thank you very much for that. If you haven't submitted the application and you think that you want to apply to Flint Hill, or you're looking at other schools, go ahead and submit the form. Our form takes about 20 minutes to complete. You don't have to have all of the supplemental documents on hand already. You can just submit the form and then get everything else to us later. As a matter of fact, once you submit the application form with us, you'll have access in a portal to a checklist that helps you keep track of all of the documents that are required in the process, and checks them off as you submit them to really help guide you through the process. And of course, once you submit the application form, that also puts you on our radar, so that we have an officer working side by side very closely with you right away to make sure that you're not blindsided by any part of the process, and there is a solid admission plan and steps in place. So that is the first step. Once you've submitted the form, some of the other supporting materials that you'll be required to submit if you're applying to Flint Hill, certainly, and like I said, many schools have very similar requirements, though there might be some nuances. So for transcripts, you'll want to request them. If it depends on how your school does reporting, which varies a bit. If you can get some first quarter grades or progress reports to us, great. If you're submitting the application now, great. We'll go ahead and take a look at those. And then you'll also want to keep it on your radar to submit the end of semester grades to us, which is typically in December. If your school's registrar office is operating, you can usually submit a request to them in November that says, once grades are posted, immediately send them to Flint Hill. And then if you submit that transcript request form to them, then it's on them to trigger when to send to us and make sure that we get those official documents. If your school isn't reporting as effectively right now in terms of getting transcripts out, as schools are functioning at different levels right now, then we will certainly take unofficial transcripts. If you get unofficial reports to your email box, or if you can log in and get them, we can certainly proceed with the admission process with unofficial documents. But once the official documents are able to be released, then we do require them for our files eventually. But you can move through the admission process with unofficial documents. Another requirement are teacher recommendations. So current year teacher for lower school, and then for middle school and for upper school, it would be current year math and English teachers. This year, many schools, including us, have customized the recommendation form to take virtual learning into consideration, since it may have been the only option for some schools and some families. So we changed our form to ask questions, both if they knew the student in person, if they knew the student virtually, and all the different considerations that go along with each of those. I know that I've gotten a lot of questions lately about families who are interested in applying and they're concerned that their teachers don't know him or her as well, especially if they are in the virtual format and depending on the class size. So we would still require the current year's teacher, but we accept supplemental recommendations. So if you think that there is a better person that a teacher from last year, a coach, a tutor, anyone that might know your child better and know your child's student profile and academic and know them academically better, then you can certainly submit supplemental recommendations through the process as well, in addition to the current year teacher recommendations. And then in terms of the writing sample, this would, of course, be for middle school and upper school grades. There is a student writing sample required, so something that they've done for an English class can be uploaded to our portal. There is a candidate questionnaire for grades 7 through 12 to be completed, and a parent questionnaire for all grades. When it comes to testing for grades JK to 2, we require the Gazelle, which is it's an assessment. It's an observational assessment. So the experience for the kids is typically they're coming to play with Miss Holly, who is the person who conducts the assessments for Flint Hill. We do it inside the institution. Right now, of course, we're doing it virtually, which has translated quite well. So if you apply and you're applying to JK to 2, we'll get that scheduled for you. For grades 3 to 6, the WISC is the typical requirement, but we are accepting a variety of testing in lieu of that right now, since the WISC might be a little bit harder to come by. So you can, if your student hasn't done the WISC and you're applying to grades 3 through 6, then submit any testing you have on file for us. And then we can let you know if might be able to make a decision with those documents, or if we'll really need to try to find a way to get the WISC done. So examples of other testing that can be submitted is the SOLs, the Cognet, the NNAT, IC, the ERBS, and MAP. And if there's other testing that you have on file, then certainly send it over to us. Every piece of information can be useful. For grades 7 through 12, we are test optional. So what that means is it's up to the family. It's the family's decision whether they want to have their child take the test and submit it to us. In terms of Flint Hill, our way of looking at it and our recommendation is that if doing a self-reflection of your child and the application and all of the other components that I discussed, if you think that your child really demonstrates a preparedness to excel at Flint Hill and they're demonstrating academic preparedness in the application, then they probably don't need to take the SSAT. Probably most of our applicants don't need to take the SSAT, but if there was some inconsistency in the record, if there's been some challenges to overcome on their academic journey, and certainly if those are more recently, then the SSAT will be an important piece to understanding the student's profile and making it an admission decision to see if Flint Hill is the place for them. So finally, in terms of the requirements for the admission process, there is an interview is required a parent interview is required at all grade levels, and then a student interview is required for the higher grades, the last of the lower school, and then the middle school and the upper school grades. So this is the opportunity, it's for us to get to know each other better. So we sit down and we talk with the parents and we talk with students separately for those old enough to be interviewed, but it's all about us getting to know them getting to know our school, the opportunity for both of us to ask questions about each other. And we recommend that you schedule the interview pretty soon after you submit the application. So after you submit the application, you'll be given a link inside your checklist where you can schedule the interview. And even if the interview isn't till November or December, that's absolutely fine. But we do recommend that you get it on the calendar right away, because scheduling does fill up and it can get a lot more challenging later. So we do recommend that you schedule it for a date when you'll at the least have the student and parent questionnaire into us, so that we have some more content for that interview. And ideally, if some of the other documents can be in, great. If not, and we have the interview and then we receive other documents and we have some questions, then we'll have plenty of phone calls and conversations, so we can certainly talk more even beyond the interview. But scheduling the interview early is highly recommended.
Jennifer, we do have a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to finish and then we go to them, or would you like me to let you know now?
I'm glad to pause here and answer a couple questions.
Okay, yeah, there are two. One is, if an employer covers part of the tuition, is somebody still eligible for financial aid?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes, absolutely. So I would still encourage to submit the financial aid application. I just switched over to the timeline slide, so you'll see that the financial aid application opens on November 1st, and the deadline is January 25th. So you want to be sure to get that in time, but it's still eligible even if tuition is partially covered by a third party.
Mm-hmm. And then one other question is, if a student comes from a Montessori background and that type of education, will they be required to take the SSAT, or is that a good idea?
That is an excellent question. So I wouldn't say required, because we are, it is the family decision. I would say that coming from a Montessori background, it's can be a little bit harder to gauge academic preparedness, just because of the difference in the way the assessments and the grading is done. So we would recommend it. I do think that it is a good step to assure that we'll have all the information that we need in order to make an admission decision. So coming from a Montessori background, coming from a homeschooling background, coming from an inconsistent academic record, those are all great reasons to pursue the SSAT.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple more whenever you're ready. Okay. One is it possible, this is a quick one, but is it possible for them to have the PowerPoint document that you're using? Are we
Yes, absolutely. So we will we'll definitely be sending out a recording of this webinar to everyone. And then we will I can also send the PowerPoint too, if you just want to flip through the slides. We'd be glad to do that.
Okay, great. And I have one more, and I'll just read this so it's helpful. But this person appreciates the points about social media monitoring and talking with existing families in general. You're welcome. How do we get a feel for the atmosphere and environment of the school in the absence of visits or attendance at sporting events or plays? And do we have virtual programs with existing families and students for kids to chat with each other and ask questions?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, and that's such an important question right now. So, in terms of it's not the same. We certainly understand that, but in terms of like the sporting events and the plays at Flint Hill, we still have a strong arts program, and we'll still be putting on some of those events, and some will be able to open up to prospective and applicant families, specifically more likely applicant families. So, so you can kind of get a feel for what the students are doing. You're not going to get a feel, of course, for like walking through the room, but there will be some, parents chatting, and you'll kind of get a feel for how parents talk with each other. We do have So if you submit an application in between the application deadline and the decision release, so the application deadline January 21st, the decision release is the first week in March. Between those two, we typically have a parent coffee where it is current parents to talk with applicant parents. And we'll see this year it might be a virtual format, but we do provide those opportunities. In terms of for the students, we are at some of our events, some of the divisional information sessions or virtual sessions, you'll want to watch those descriptions. At some of those, we will be having breakout sessions during the event. And the purpose of the breakout session is for parents to speak with other parents, current and considering parents, in different breakout rooms. And then for current students to speak with prospective or applicant students in breakout rooms as well, so that there'll be some of that peer-to-peer conversations.
I think that's it for right now, Jennifer.
Okay, so I will, we're getting ready to wrap up here. So keep the questions coming. If you have additional questions, please chat them in and we'll be sure to get to them. And I will cover here the admission timeline, which is up on your screen. So as I mentioned, the application's open. October, you'll want to make sure that your interview is scheduled, not to take place in October, but that it's on the calendar for a future date. You'll want to make sure it's scheduled in October. If you are pursuing tests, or if tests are required for the division you're applying to, you'll want to make sure to get those scheduled. November is the time to start to ask the teachers for recommendations. Our recommendation forms open up on November 1st. So you'll want to, that is a time when teachers should have had some time with your child, if it's their first year with them, and be able to write a recommendation sometime in November or early December. We mentioned the transcripts and the financial aid application. And even though you'll see in December, this is all applications should be submitted or scheduled, but the deadlines in January. So the reason that we say that everything should be submitted by the end of December is because, as you know, in life, things get really busy in the December and January months. And families that just apply late or submit the application late or try to start getting these pieces together, sometimes they'll hit some obstacles. Maybe they're having trouble getting a document. Maybe there's some other obstacle. And if they're trying to do all of this in January, it doesn't allow time for us to overcome those obstacles together. So trying to aim for December really allows your family to take some pressure off and to be sure that everything's going to be in by that deadline. The financial aid deadline, January 25th. As I mentioned, the first week decisions are released. And then April, May, and the summer is really about placement. It's about celebrating. If you've decided to join the Flint Hill family and the Husky community, it's about preparing for the transition. We have socials, we have student socials, we have parent socials, so that everyone can get to know each other before they start in the school year. Of course, information and orientation type events to understanding the nuts and bolts of Flint Hill, and then starting school and at the end of summer, early fall.
Jennifer, we have two more questions.
Okay.
One is, this specifically pertains to high school applicants. Will things be back to normal next fall? And if not, how can we ensure that new students get to know their peers in the upper school?
Sure. So that is a great question. And I don't know if things will be back to normal in the fall. It really depends on how the pandemic evolves. And Flint Hill, as long as we are in phase 3, we are committed in terms of the state of Virginia, and the governor is allowing school, then we will have the option for in-person. At the upper school, it is at lower and middle school, it's 5 days a week in person. At upper school, it is 2 days a week in person. It's more of a hybrid model, and then the rest virtually. So we'll continue to offer those options as long as we're in phase 3. Our current plan indicates that we will continue to offer in person even in phase 2 for JK to grade 4. And then, of course, typically phase 1 or lockdown, then nobody is really permitted to have in-person learning. So it's all going to depend on the pandemic evolve. So Flint Hill has a plan for each step of, depending on the phases of Virginia. Of course, we're anticipating and hoping that we move into a direction where we just have everybody on campus 5 days a week. And as soon as it is safe to do that, we are going to do that, because that's how our students thrive, and that is what we want. We want everyone to be here. So if things aren't back to that, 5 days a week, everybody's here. Those socials that I mentioned that we have over the course of the summer, we would still have those. We would just have them in a virtual format. We would also have ways of connecting students with other students, so they can call, text, email each other, however they want to communicate. And they usually make those, form those relationships at the socials and then carry them over until the start of the year. And then regardless of whether it's a more normal circumstance or more like it was this year, our first few weeks of school are all about building the community. So the first week this year, we had an orientation week where students came for a half day. It was all about, here's your classmates, here's your teachers, here's time to form these relationships, here's time to get comfortable with the school. This year was getting comfortable with the mask and the temperature screenings and some of the safety protocols. So we definitely build in time for that community building and for students to first feel secure and safe before they go into the rigor of their academic schedule. So that's one of our biggest priorities at Flint Hill, because we know they're not going to learn well and they're not going to learn deep if they don't first feel safe, secure, and connected. So that's always our first goal and priority.
And Jennifer, as an out-of-state applicant, are there any special considerations that they should consider, that they should account for? And this is specific to the middle school and the upper school.
No, there isn't. As a matter of fact, it's a great time to be an out-of-state applicant, because schools are offering more opportunities out of necessity to see them from far away. So there isn't any additional admission requirements, especially now when we're doing everything virtually. And it's actually probably a bit easier to be applying from out of state. We're already doing the interviews virtually. The Gazelle, which would be for lower school, a different division, but that's done virtually. So you'll have someone from out of state will have all the same experience and opportunities that people around the corner will.
And Jennifer, what would you say distinguishes Flint Hill from other schools in the surrounding area?
That is a great question. There are a lot of factors that distinguish Flint Hill from other schools in the area. One of them is balance. We're academically rigorous, and we're known for being very academically rigorous, but we also have a strong social emotional program. So we are focusing on balance and well-being and happiness throughout the program here. So we're focusing on, as I mentioned, like the deep connection and the community and the safety and the security. And part of our vision is the take meaningful risk, which really requires people to be vulnerable, which requires safety and security. So here at Flint Hill, our students feel very connected. And when, the neuroscience of learning demonstrates that learning is actually quite, it's effective. So it's emotional. So when students are connected and safe and secure, they're really able to be vulnerable. They're able to go a lot deeper in their learning, and they're of course happier, which then creates deeper learning. And so students are finding that balance of, yes, they're doing hard things and they're trying new things, and it's academically rigorous and sometimes hard, but they feel connected and supported as they're moving along the journey, and they feel like a commitment and a big part of the community. Another defining feature of Flint Hill, and I could probably have a whole webinar on this question alone. So you got me started a bit, but we're relentlessly innovative and flexible. So we're never resting on our laurels. We're always willing to switch and pivot to the best way to do things that's grounded in research and makes sense, of course, so that we aren't so that we're flexible and nimble. And for our teachers, for our students, it's really natural for them to pivot, which is part of why we did so well when everybody had to pivot in March, because everybody was used to pivoting when needed to do something the best way or to innovate. Innovation requires change and flexibility. And so those are really core components of us as an institution. And that's how we're able to, continuously improve and grow and challenge ourselves and the students. So that's probably the shortest possible answer I can give to that question. That
was great. I do have two more. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say that we will have, we're going to have like Tuesday tips on social media. So keep your eyes open for our Instagram and our Facebook accounts, where we'll be diving into topics. You'll hear from the headmaster there, and also at events like more about Flint Hill and the Flint Hill difference. And then we'll also have some other events where we're really diving deep into how Flint Hill is different from some of the other institutions.
And then Jennifer, this is just a quick question regarding lower school. The question just basically is, do we have a certain number of classes or groups available seats, or are we accepting everyone and then rearranging our courses based on the number of things? In other words, is there a cap on the number of students, or are we accepting everyone and then creating the classes from there?
That's a great question. And we do have a capacity each year. So there are a limited number of seats each year that students are applying for. As an institution, we just opened a brand new middle school. So we're able to grow and we have grown, and we're able to grow some, but we certainly are at a place where we do need to put caps on the classes. So we're looking for the most mission appropriate families, of course, to fill those seats.
And then Jennifer, do we have any written information regarding the alumni network, not just colleges attended, but the types of careers that alumni explore post Flint Hill?
That's a great question, and that's one I will do a little bit more digging into. Jordy, if you wouldn't mind taking a note of the name of the person that asked that question, and I will do a little bit of digging to see if I can find some documentation on that, and then I'll circle back and follow up.
Absolutely. And that's it for right now.
Okay. So I'll just close. I'll be glad to ask more questions, but on the screen now is the last slide, and it's really about the next steps with Flint Hill. And we've talked about so many of these today already. There's a couple links there. We have on our virtual events page, when you scroll down, you'll get to a whole series of recorded webinars, everything from how we approach teaching math to what Flint Hill knows about how your student learns, which really gets into like that Flint Hill difference in the way that we're teaching students. And so there's a lot of webinars there, a lot of recordings. We also have our live events posted there. If you haven't already attended a divisional one, or you want to attend a different type of divisional one, we invite you to keep coming to these virtual events. If you click on the Flint Hill or go to flinthill.org, the admission team, you can schedule a virtual meeting, you can schedule a phone consultation, so we can take these conversations to a more personal one-on-one level when you are ready to do that. And then of course we hope that we'll see you on social media, which will be another opportunity to learn more about us. So that concludes my presentation today. I am glad to answer any more questions if there are any more questions. Otherwise, if you think of questions after this webinar, of course email us, give us a phone call, schedule a meeting, whatever works for you, and we will be here to answer your questions, and really looking forward to getting to know you and your families so much better during the process.
I think we're good on questions, Jennifer, so maybe we can end then.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for spending an hour, your lunch hour, with me today. Really appreciate seeing so many faces and many familiar faces on the screen today. So it was great to see everyone, and we will connect again very soon. Bye-bye.